I'm Harvey, 72. I gave my life to family, and I lost my son.
My daughter-in-law crushed him with control, fear, and daily humiliation.
The wrench jingled on the concrete floor of the garage as I heard the phone ringing from home. I wiped my hands on an old rag and walked leisurely to the phone, leaving the hood of the old Ford open. At 72, I'd learned not to rush. Time waits for no one, and fidgeting only spoils the job. After 40 years of working as a mechanic at Middletown Auto Service, I could afford a measured pace of life. Dash, dash. Hello? Ah, hey. My voice sounded hoarse after hours of silence in the garage. Harvey, it's Dorothy Parker, your neighbor. The woman's voice sounded worried. I'm sorry to bother you, but have you by any chance seen Travis today? I leaned against the kitchen table and looked out the window at the Parker house across the street. Dorothy was standing at her window with her phone to her ear, her gray hair neatly styled as always. This woman was in her 80s, but she still looked after herself and knew more about her neighbors' lives than the local newspaper. She never gossiped angrily, just genuinely cared about people. No, Dorothy, I haven't. What happened? I drove by their house this morning, and Travis' car was in the driveway. Gray Toyota he bought last year. It's gone now, but Kimberly's been running around the yard like a stray, asking me over the fence if I knew where he might be. She looked disheveled, not even wearing makeup. I rubbed the bridge of my nose, feeling the familiar tension. Travis really hadn't called in 3 days, which was highly unusual for him. Usually my youngest son came by at least once a week to help with chores, have a beer, talk about work. But in the last few months, those visits had become less and less frequent. Kimberly could think of 1,000 reasons why her husband couldn't visit his father. Maybe he was just away on business, I said, though I didn't really believe it. You know how young people live, always in a hurry. Maybe, Dorothy didn't sound convinced. She just seemed very agitated, yelling into the phone, waving her arms. You know how it is when people are really worried, not when they're just nervous about nothing. I knew the difference. I also knew that Kimberly could portray any emotion better than a professional actress. In 8 years of marriage to my son, she had honed that skill to perfection. Hysterics, tears, suicide threats. The whole arsenal of manipulation was at her disposal. Thanks for letting me know, Dorothy. If I hear anything, I'll let you know. Okay, Harvey, and don't hesitate to call if you need any help. We're neighbors. I will. Have a good day. I hung up the phone and walked slowly back to the garage. The old mansion I'd lived in for 45 years creaked with every step I took. The house remembered a time when children laughed here, when Helen cooked Sunday dinners for the whole family. I didn't use most of the rooms now. Why would a lonely old man need so much space? The '86 Ford waited patiently for my attention. Changing the oil filter was not a difficult job, but it required care. I loved tinkering with cars. It calmed my nerves and allowed my brain to work in the background. After so many years in the car service, mechanics became not just a profession, but a way of thinking. Every detail had its place. Every problem had a logical solution. Too bad family problems weren't solved as easily as engine malfunctions. The oil trickled darkly into the receptacle underneath while I reflected on Travis's last visit. It was Monday around 7 in the evening. My son looked tired and nervous, looking back at the road all the time, as if he expected to be watched. Kimberly had really been monitoring his every move lately, calling work, checking the odometer in the car, even going through the pockets of his clothes. Dad, I found an apartment downtown, he said then, sitting on an old stool in the garage. It's small, but it's clean. I'm thinking of moving out this weekend. Finally, I said, not lifting my head from the engine I was working on. It's time for you to get on with your life. She won't give me half the money in the account. She says, if I leave, I'll only get what I had before I got married. And that's almost nothing. Money isn't the most important thing, son. It's easy to say when there's enough. He smiled sadly. But you're right. I'm tired of the constant scandals and inspections, of having to account for every penny I spend. That's when I thought he was really ready to make a move. Travis had always been soft, but when pushed to his limits, he could be surprisingly firm. It was rare, though. The new filter clicked into place. I tightened the fasteners and lowered the car off the jack. still thinking about Kimberly's strange behavior. 8 years ago, when Travis had brought her to meet me, she'd made quite an impression. A pretty girl in her 30s with brown hair and a charming smile. She worked as an administrator in a dental clinic, talked about plans for the future, was interested in family traditions. But gradually I began to notice warning signs. She'd never left Travis alone with me for long, constantly calling him during our appointments, finding reasons to cut back on visits. At first it seemed like the natural jealousy of a newlywed. Then it started to look like systematic control. After the wedding, the situation only worsened. Kimberly took over the family finances, citing that she was better at budgeting. Travis received a small amount of money for pocket change and had to report every purchase over $50. She spent the money freely enough on cosmetics, clothes, jewelry. The phone rang again as I was washing my hands in the garage sink. This time it was my cell phone, and my oldest son's name popped up on the screen. "Dad?" Justin's voice sounded official, like it always did when he was on duty. "Hey, son, what's new at the police station?" Same old, same old. Petty theft, family disputes, drunk driving." "Listen, do you know where Travis is? Kimberly called the precinct a half hour ago, said he'd been missing since this morning. But when the desk clerk suggested we file a formal report, she suddenly changed her mind." I wiped my hands and leaned against the workbench. Justin had been a detective on the local police force for 15 years, rising to the rank of lieutenant. He was the exact opposite of his younger brother, determined, straightforward, not one to let anyone manipulate him. Perhaps that's why Kimberly couldn't stand him and tried to minimize contact between the brothers. Dorothy Parker asked about him too, said Kimberly seemed agitated, running around the yard. "She always looks agitated when she can't control the situation." Justin's voice was tired. "Remember when she threw a tantrum when Travis wanted to go fishing with us last year?" I bet I don't remember that episode. Justin and I had planned a weekend at the lake, just a father and two sons, just like old times. Travis enthusiastically agreed, even bought a new fishing rod. But the night before the trip, Kimberly made a huge scene. She cried all evening, accusing her husband of not loving her and preferring family to wife. Talked about suicide if he left her. Travis ended up staying home to comfort his wife. Maybe he really did decide to move out on her, I speculated. On Monday, he said he'd found an apartment downtown. "That would be nice." Justin was quiet, and I could hear him flipping through some papers. "But you know Travis. He's too soft for a serious confrontation, and Kimberly is a master at finding leverage." That was the bitter truth. Travis had avoided conflict since he was a kid. Even in school, when he'd been bullied by his peers, he'd preferred to back down rather than fight back. After his mother died of cancer when he was 16, he became even more withdrawn and vulnerable. Helen was the linchpin in our family, able to find a way to approach each of our sons. Without her, it was harder for me to understand my youngest son's emotional needs. Perhaps it was this emotional insecurity that made him an easy target for a predator like Kimberly. She had a knack for alternating between aggression and self-pity, making Travis feel guilty for any attempt at independence. "If he calls or shows up at your place, let me know right away," Justin asked. "I have a bad feeling about this whole situation." "What exactly are you worried about?" "Well, for one thing, Kimberly called the station, not me personally. She knows I'm on the force. Why didn't she call me directly? Second of all, she refused to file a formal report. If her husband was really missing, a normal wife would go to any lengths to find him. The logic was ironclad. Justin had learned to analyze human behavior from years of working with criminals and victims. If he sensed a catch, then there was indeed cause for concern. "Okay, I'll keep you posted," I promised. "I'll see you this weekend." "I'll try to be there Saturday after my shift. I want to talk to Travis if he shows up." "See you later, son." I put my phone in my work jacket pocket and looked at my watch. 4:30 in the afternoon. This was usually the time I finished fiddling in the garage and went into the house to make dinner. The simple, measured life of a pensioner who had learned to find pleasure in the little things. A well-brewed coffee, an interesting book, working with his hands. But today the calm did not come. The anxious calls from Dorothy and Justin, Kimberly's strange behavior, all of it added up to a disturbing picture. In 72 years of life, I'd learned to trust my intuition. It rarely failed me. Closing the garage, I headed toward the house along the familiar path through the small garden. Helen had once planted beds of roses and lavender, but since her death, I'd maintained only the most unpretentious plants. The house required constant attention. The old roof, creaky steps, leaky taps. But these cares gave a sense of need, filled the time. In the kitchen, I put the kettle on the stove and sat at the table by the window. From here, I had a clear view of the driveway to Travis's house. The white one-story house with blue shutters looked exemplary. Kimberly spent a lot of time and money maintaining the exterior. Perfect lawn, fresh paint, expensive garden ornaments. Kimberly's red Honda Accord stood on its own. The car had been purchased 2 years ago when Travis had gotten a promotion at work. Of course, the car was officially registered to his wife. Kimberly had convinced her husband that it was better for insurance. The kettle whistled, interrupting my gloomy musings. I made a strong black tea with a spoonful of honey, a habit left over from Helen. She'd said honey was healthier than sugar, and I'd continued to follow her advice even 5 years after the funeral. Outside the window, it was beginning to get dusk. March days were still short in Middletown, the sun setting around 6 in the evening. The windows in the house across the street were lit, but Kimberly's silhouette was nowhere to be seen. Could she really have been looking for her husband? Or was she just waiting for him to come back to confess? The phone rang for the 3rd time that day. This time it was from an unfamiliar number. Harvey Coleman speaking. Mr. Coleman, my name is Susan Martin. I work with Travis at the insurance company. I'm sorry to bother you at home, but Travis hasn't shown up for work today, and he's not answering his cell phone. That's not like him at all. The anxiety's getting worse. Travis had worked as an agent for a large insurance company for 7 years, never missing work unannounced. He was a conscientious employee, though not overly ambitious. Kimberly hadn't encouraged his desire for career advancement, preferring to control a steady but modest income. When was the last time you saw him? I asked. He was working late last night, preparing documents for a big client. He said he wanted to be done by this morning. We agreed to meet at 9 to discuss the details of the presentation. And he didn't show up? No. I called his cell phone and his home phone. No answer. Usually when something happens, Travis gives me a heads up or tells his wife to tell me. I thanked the woman and promised to contact her if anything came up. The picture was getting more and more disturbing. Travis had disappeared somewhere between last night and this morning. His car's gone, his cell phone's not answering, he didn't show up for work, and Kimberly was acting weird, calling the police, but refusing to file a report. I finished my tea and went to the window. The lights were still on in the house across the street, but there was no movement. Maybe I should go talk to Kimberly directly, find out exactly what had happened the last time she'd seen her husband. But something kept me from taking that step. Justin was right. There was something suspicious about Kimberly's behavior, and my experience told me that in a situation like this, it was better to get a better understanding of the circumstances first. I decided to wait for a call from Justin or Travis. Maybe by morning, everything would be clearer, and my worries would be for nothing. In the back of my mind, though, I knew something serious had happened. The night passed restlessly. I got up several times and looked out the window at Travis's house, but it was completely silent. The gray Toyota never showed up in the driveway. In the morning, after drinking coffee and watching the local news on TV, I decided to walk to the post office. I needed to pay bills and buy groceries, but most importantly, I wanted to stretch and think in the fresh air. Middletown was waking up slowly on this Thursday. School buses had already taken the kids to school, office workers were rushing to get to work, and retirees were leisurely walking their dogs or watering their front gardens. I loved the morning atmosphere of a small town where everyone knew each other, and life flowed at a measured pace. On the way, I met Frank Miller, a neighbor from the next street over. He had been a letter carrier for 30 years and knew as much about the locals as the police. "Hello, Harvey," he said, adjusting a heavy bag on his shoulder. "I hear your youngest is having family problems. What makes you think that?" "I was delivering mail yesterday, saw Kimberly carrying stuff from the house to the car, some suitcase, boxes, and then she dragged it all back in." That's weird. That information added another piece to the puzzle. So Kimberly was going somewhere last night but changed her mind? Or was she packing Travis' things to leave? Maybe she was just cleaning up. I suggested neutrally. Maybe, Frank shrugged. But she didn't look like the kind of hostess who cleaned. Nervous, angry, she almost scratched her neighbor's car when she backed out. I thanked her for the information and continued on my way to the post office, thinking about what I had heard. The more details I gathered, the weirder the situation seemed. Travis was gone. Kimberly was nervous in packing and unpacking while refusing to file a formal police report. Remembering the history of my son's relationship with his wife, I realized that the preconditions for a serious conflict had been building up for years. It all started innocently enough. For the first few months after the wedding, Kimberly simply wanted to spend more time with her husband. This is natural for newlyweds. She would sweetly ask Travis not to stay at my place for more than an hour or two, citing that she missed being alone. Then came more subtle methods of control. Kimberly started scheduling things to do together exactly when Travis usually visited his father. There was a family dinner with her parents, a shopping trip, or a sudden headache that required the presence of a caring husband. Travis, not wanting to upset his wife, gradually reduced his visits to me. A year after the wedding, Kimberly took control of the family finances. She convinced her husband that a woman was better at budgeting and keeping track of expenses. Travis, who had never liked dealing with numbers and accounts, willingly shifted this responsibility to his wife. At first, it seemed like a reasonable division of household duties, but gradually financial control became a suffocating grip. Kimberly had set up a separate account for Travis's paycheck and gave him pocket money like a teenager. Any purchase over $50 required her approval. She herself spent the family money freely enough on cosmetics, clothes, jewelry, trips to beauty salons. "I know better what to spend money on," she said when Travis timidly objected. "You're a man. You don't understand the value of money. You'll buy something stupid and then you'll regret it." I remember Travis complaining to me that he wanted to buy new fishing gear, but Kimberly said it was a waste of money. Yet she herself had spent $300 on a new purse that same month. The control extended to social connections. Kimberly skillfully turned her husband against old friends, finding flaws in each of them. One of them drank too much, another had a bad influence on Travis, or the third was simply unpleasant to her. Gradually, Travis's social circle narrowed down to work colleagues and her acquaintances. His relationship with his family was particularly strained. Kimberly thought I was meddling too much in their family life, and Justin was turning his little brother against her. She made a scene after every family visit, accusing her husband of loving his in-laws more than his wife. "Your father thinks I'm unworthy," she cried after one of our meetings. "And my brother hates me. They want to destroy our marriage." Travis tried to explain that we were just concerned for his well-being, but Kimberly saw any concern as a threat to her influence. She demanded that her husband choose between his family and her. At the post office, I paid my bills and bought stamps, talking to a few acquaintances. No one had seen Travis since yesterday, but everyone had noticed Kimberly's strange behavior. She'd been driving around town last night, stopping at different houses, talking to someone through the car window. When I got home, I found a note in my mailbox from Dorothy Parker. "Harvey, if you have any news about Travis, be sure to let me know." Kimberly seemed upset again this morning. I was just about to eat lunch when I heard the familiar sound of a diesel engine. Justin always drove the company pickup, even in his spare time, a senior detective's privilege. Looking out the window, I saw my son parking in front of my house. Justin looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes and his uniform was wrinkled, the signs of a long shift. He was 45 years old, but sometimes it felt like more. Police work ages people quickly. "Hi, Dad," he hugged me tightly on the doorstep. "Can I get some coffee? I had a rough night." "Sure, sit down. Tell me what's going on." Justin sat down at the kitchen table, rubbing his temples with tired fingers. I set a mug of hot coffee in front of him and sat across from him. "Any news on Travis?" "No news. Do you have anything to tell me?" "Not directly, but something came up." Justin took a sip of his coffee and grew serious. "Kimberly called the emergency services around 11 o'clock last night. She reported a domestic dispute, asked them to send a patrol car, but when the car arrived, she said it was resolved and she didn't need any help. So they really did fight last night. Looks like it. Neighbors heard screaming coming from their house around 9:30, but no one knows the details." Justin was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing his words. Dad, I did some checking through the databases. Kimberly has mental health issues. 2 years ago, she was hospitalized after a suicide attempt, but the doctors deemed it a demonstrative gesture, not a serious suicide attempt. This information didn't surprise me. Kimberly often made suicidal threats when she wanted to get her way. I remember several episodes where she used this tactic against Travis. Most notably 3 years ago, when my son first brought up divorce. That's when Travis came to me in a state of near despair. He said that he could no longer bear the constant pressure and control. He wanted to leave his wife and start life over again. I supported his decision, advised him to contact a lawyer and prepare for the division of property. But a week later, Travis called me crying into the phone. She tried to kill herself, Dad. Found her in the bathroom with her veins cut. Says if I leave her, she'll die for sure. I then suggested my son call an ambulance and hospitalize Kimberly for evaluation, but she flatly refused medical attention, promising that she would never threaten suicide again if only Travis would stay with her. You won't leave me, will you? She pleaded with tears in her eyes. I love you so much that I would die without you. Travis, of course, could not withstand such emotional blackmail. He abandoned his divorce plans and even agreed to couples therapy, which Kimberly offered. However, after a month, she herself stopped the sessions, saying that the psychologist turns her against her husband. There was one more detail, Justin continued, interrupting my recollection. I ran her phone calls for the last 24 hours. Last night, after the emergency call, she called her sister in Chicago several times. The conversations were long, 20 to 30 minutes each. Maybe she was just complaining about family problems? It's possible, but here's the thing. The sister works for a travel agency specializing in overseas travel. Why would Kimberly need her services in the middle of a family crisis? The logic was ironclad. If your husband goes missing, you call the police, hospitals, the morgue, but not a travel agent to plan a vacation. What do you really think? I asked bluntly. Justin finished his coffee and looked at me carefully. Honestly, I think Travis tried to leave her for good and she couldn't take it. Kimberly is capable of extreme measures when she loses control of a situation. Remember when she scratched the car of that guy who tried to flirt with Travis at the bar 2 years ago? I remember that incident. Kimberly waited for a stranger in the parking lot and mangled his car with her keys. When the owner tried to confront her, she claimed she was defending the family's honor against trespassing. But what could she have done? I asked, even though I was already forming disturbing assumptions in my heart. I don't know exactly, but I have a plan to find out. Justin leaned closer. I want to talk to her under the pretense of a routine checkup. I'll tell her I'm filing a report on last night's emergency call. See how she reacts, ask her a few leading questions. What if she suspects something? Dad, I've been working with criminals for 15 years. I know how to get people to give themselves away. Justin got up from the table and stretched, stretching out his stiff muscles. By the way, I checked hospitals within a 100-kilometer radius. No one named Travis Coleman has been admitted in the last 24 hours. That's good news and bad news at the same time. Why is it bad news? Because if something's happened to him, he's somewhere an ambulance can't get to. We went out on the porch. The day was overcast with low gray clouds, typical of March in our region. Justin lit a cigarette, a bad habit he couldn't kick despite all my entreaties. Dad, there's one more thing I don't want to say out loud. He took a drag and let the smoke out slowly. If Kimberly really did something to Travis, we need to be prepared for the worst-case scenario, which is what? That we might never see him alive again. The words hung in the air like a sentence. I knew my son was right. The statistics of police work were inexorable. The more time that passed since a person disappeared, the less likely they were to be found unharmed. But we're not going to sit idly by, Justin continued, tossing the cigarette butt under his feet. If she thinks she can just get rid of Travis and get away with it, she's mistaken. There was a cold determination in his voice that was both frightening and comforting. Justin was a good cop precisely because he knew how to separate emotion from the job. When it came to justice, he could be ruthless. What do you want me to do? Nothing yet. Act normal, but keep an eye on Kimberly's house. Record her departure and return times. Note who's visiting. Any little thing could be important. Justin got in the pickup and started the engine. I'll go talk to her now. If it's an emergency, call right away. He drove away and I stood on the porch, looking at the house across the street. The lights were still on in the windows, but there was no movement visible. Somewhere out there was a woman who might know the truth about my youngest son's fate. And if my suspicions were justified, it wouldn't be long before she realized she'd messed with the wrong people. After Justin left, I tried to do the usual things, but I couldn't concentrate. I picked up a book and couldn't read a page. I turned on the TV and the news seemed distant and unimportant. I kept thinking the same thoughts about Travis and possible scenarios for his disappearance. Around 3 in the afternoon, I decided to take a walk to the local hardware store. I needed to buy some paint for the fence. Spring chores were a must, even in this situation. The measured physical activity always helped me think more clearly. The store was a 10-minute walk from my house, in an old neighborhood in Middletown that still had buildings from the 50s. The owner, Tom Bradshaw, had known me for 20 years. I often bought tools and supplies from him. "Harvey," he greeted me from the counter. "How are you? I hear your youngest is in trouble at home." News traveled fast in the small town. By tonight, everyone in Middletown would know about Travis' disappearance. "I don't know exactly what's going on," I answered cautiously. "Maybe it's just a misunderstanding." Tom scratched his gray beard. "I saw him filling up at a gas station near the highway yesterday. It was late, about 10 o'clock at night. He looked upset, couldn't even say hello. That information was important. So Travis was really going somewhere late last night. Maybe he decided to spend the night somewhere else after his fight with Kimberly. But then why didn't he show up for work this morning? Was he alone?" "Yeah, he was alone. Filled up the tank, got a coffee and a sandwich. Said he had a long drive ahead of him. Tom helped me pick out paint and brushes while he told me the local news. Turns out Kimberly went to the bank this morning and stood there for over an hour. Then she stopped at the drugstore to buy some medicine. That's an odd route for a woman whose husband is missing. On the way home from shopping, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked outside Travis's house, a black Buick with out-of-state license plates. Through the fence, I could see Kimberly talking to a tall, middle-aged man in a dark suit. The conversation looked tense. The woman was gesturing vigorously. The man was shaking his head. I hurried home and called Justin. "There's a stranger outside Travis's house," I reported. "A black Buick, no local plates. Kimberly's arguing with him about something." "I'll run it through the database," Justin answered, and I heard the tapping of computer keys. "Can you see the license plate?" I went to the window and looked closely. The car was parked at an angle, but part of the license plate was visible. It starts with KLM, but I can't make out the rest. "Got it. Keep watching, but keep your head down. If they see you watching, they might get suspicious." The man stayed with Kimberly for about half an hour. Before he left, he handed her some kind of envelope. She signed something and returned the papers. Then the Buick drove off, and Kimberly quickly disappeared into the house. The phone rang as I was making my evening tea. It was Kimberly. Her voice sounded hysterical, her words coming out of a bag. "Harvey, help me. Travis is missing. I don't know what to do." "Calm down, Kimberly. Just tell me exactly what happened." "We had a fight last night," she sobbed into the phone. "He said he wanted a divorce, that he'd found an apartment. I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. He said terrible things." "What kind of things?" "That I was his soul, that he couldn't live like this anymore, that he'd rather die than stay with me." There was real panic in Kimberly's voice, but something in her tone was unsettling. She sounded too theatrical in her key phrases. "So what happened next?" "He packed up and left. He said he'd think about where to live and would come back for the rest of his things. But it's been 24 hours and he hasn't called. There's no answer on his cell phone." "Did you call the police?" A little pause. "I did, but they said we had to wait 48 hours. They said a grown man has the right to leave home if he wants to." That was a lie. Justin already told me that she refused to make a formal application. "Kimberly, who was at your place today, saw a car with someone else's license plate?" Another pause, longer this time. It was an insurance agent, about the homeowner's policy. I've been planning it for a long time." Another lie. People don't deal with insurance issues when their loved ones go missing. "Look, I understand that you're worried," I said as sympathetically as possible. "But maybe Travis just wants to be alone, to think about your relationship." "No," she almost screamed. "Something's wrong. I can feel it." He's never been gone this long before. Why are you so calm anyway? It's your son. I'm not calm. I'm just trying to think logically. I have to go look for him. I'm going to the lake where we met, or to your old summer house in the country. Maybe he's there. Kimberly, you shouldn't go alone. Wait until tomorrow. If he doesn't show up, we'll figure something out together. Okay, she's calmed down a little. But if there's no news by tomorrow morning, I'll file a police report. Officially, the conversation ended, leaving me with mixed feelings. On the one hand, Kimberly did seem disturbed by her husband's disappearance. On the other hand, her explanation didn't jibe with the facts that Justin knew. I immediately called my oldest son and recounted the conversation. Interesting, Justin commented. Hey, Drew, so she's ready to make an official statement tomorrow? Yesterday she said no. What about the man I saw? I ran the license plate. Cars registered to a Richard Stone from Detroit. Private investigator, specializes in family cases. The puzzle was starting to come together in a disturbing way. Private investigators usually investigated adultery, missing persons, or divorce cases. Do you think she hired him to find Travis? Or the other way around, Justin replied thoughtfully. Maybe she wants to make sure no one finds him. We agreed to meet tonight and discuss the next steps. Until then, I was to keep watch and record any suspicious movements. The rest of the day passed quietly. Kimberly didn't go anywhere, only going out once to get the mail from the box. She looked tired and disheveled, not at all the way she usually took care of her appearance. In the evening, around 8 o'clock, Justin arrived. He was in civilian clothes this time, but it was clear from the look on his face that the news was not good. Dad, we need to have a serious talk, he said, walking into the house. I found out something important. We sat down in the living room. Justin took out a notebook and a pen, a habit of a policeman who was used to writing everything down. First of all, I've been talking to my colleagues from other counties. In the last 24 hours, there have been no reported incidents involving a gray Toyota or a person matching Travis's description. Is that good or bad? More like bad, so if something happened, it was in a place where random people wouldn't find it. Justin thumbed through his notebook and continued. Second, I checked the financial transactions on Travis cards. The last transaction was at 10:30 last night at a gas station. Tom Bradshaw was right, filling up a full tank and buying food. The card wasn't used after that. And the cell phone, last cell phone signal was picked up around 11 last night in Black Ridge Forest. That's 20 kilometers from the city, a forested area with several hiking trails. Black Ridge was a popular place for hiking and fishing, but it was deserted in the winter and early spring. Dense forest, deep ravines, plenty of places to hide anything. You think he went there on his own? I don't know. Maybe he wanted to be alone in nature. Think about the situation. Or maybe someone made him go there. Justin closed his notebook and looked at me seriously. Dad, there's another detail that's been bothering me. I contacted a colleague in Detroit, found out about that private investigator. Richard Stone does work on family cases, but he has a reputation for not being too picky about his methods. Meaning? I mean, if you need to frighten, compromise, or even, remove an obstacle, he's willing to help for the right price. The words hung in the air. I realized that we were at the point where assumptions became a terrifying reality. If Kimberly had indeed hired such a man, the situation was far more serious than I'd realized. What are we going to do? I'll go to Black Ridge tomorrow morning, Justin said firmly. Officially, it will be a routine search for a missing person, but I want you to come with me. Why? Because if we find something, he's quiet. It's better to have family around. We sat in silence for a few minutes, each of us thinking about something else. Finally, Justin stood up. I have to go. I'll pick you up early tomorrow morning and go look for Travis. What if Kimberly sees us leaving together? Let her see. If she's innocent, she'll understand our concern. And if she's guilty. He didn't finish his sentence, but I understood. If Kimberly is involved in Travis' disappearance, she already knows where to find him, and our search wouldn't surprise her. After Justin left, I sat at the window for a long time, watching the house across the street. All the windows were lit, and I could see Kimberly going from room to room, doing something. Occasionally, she'd come to the window and look toward my house. I got the impression that she was watching someone too. Around midnight, I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. My mind was reeling with bits and pieces of conversations, details of Kimberly's behavior over the past few months, memories of the last time I'd seen Travis. Something important was escaping my attention, some detail that might make things clearer. And outside the window, the lights continued to burn on in the house where the woman might have known the truth about my son's fate. And if tomorrow's search confirmed my worst fears, Kimberly would realize very soon that she had made a fatal mistake. Justin arrived at 7:30 in the morning when I had just finished breakfast. I woke up several times to every rustle, listening to the sounds outside the window. Kimberly's house was dark until morning, but the lights came on around 6. She didn't sleep well either. "Ready, Dad?" Justin asked, entering the house. He was in hiking clothes, jeans, warm jacket, sturdy boots. A backpack with the necessary gear hung over his shoulder. "Ready. What would you tell Kimberly if she asked?" "Nothing much. Just thought we'd look for Travis in places he liked to go, as long as it's not a lie." We piled into Justin's sport utility vehicle. The morning was cool but sunny, the first truly spring day of the year. The buds were swelling on the trees and I could smell the odor of thawing earth in the air. At other times I would have enjoyed this weather, but now the beauty of nature seemed out of place amid our gloomy concerns. The drive to Black Ridge Forest took about half an hour. We drove mostly in silence, each immersed in our own thoughts. Justin turned on the police radio station, listening to the night's incident reports. Nothing to do with Travis or the gray Toyota. The Black Ridge woodlands stretched for many kilometers north of Middletown. There were several campgrounds for hikers, marked trails of varying difficulty, and bridges over streams and ravines. Families with children, hikers, and fishermen came here in the summer. But in March, the forest was practically deserted. We parked at the main entrance and studied the trail map posted on the information board. "Where do we start?" I asked. "The last cell phone signal was picked up around this area." Justin pointed to the map. "It's near the old stone bridge over Miller Creek. Trail number 3 leads there, about 2 kilometers on foot." We grabbed our backpacks and set off down the trail. The forest greeted us with silence, broken only by birdsong and the sound of the creek in the distance. The trail was well traveled, though covered with last year's leaves. In some places there were puddles of melted snow. As I walked along familiar ground, I remembered how often I had been here with my sons as a child. Helen would pack us sandwiches and a thermos of tea, and we'd set out for the day, exploring trails, building dams out of branches, teaching the boys how to recognize animal tracks. Travis especially loved these hikes, could spend hours watching squirrels and birds, and had a collection of interesting rocks. "Dad, look!" Justin stopped and pointed to the side of the trail. Car tire tracks were visible in the soft earth. They turned off the main trail onto a narrow dirt road that led to the old bridge in a roundabout way. This road was used mostly by the Park Service to haul equipment. "Fresh tracks," Justin said, squatting down. "Yesterday or the day before. The tread width is consistent with a passenger car." We followed the dirt road, scrutinizing the tracks. After a kilometer, the road widened into a small clearing next to an old stone bridge. The bridge had been built back in the 30s, connecting the banks of Miller Creek at its narrowest point. Now it was used only by pedestrians, too narrow and dilapidated for cars. The car tracks ended in a clearing. It was visible where the car had turned around for the return trip. Near the bridge, Justin found cigarette butts. 2 pieces, smoked down to the filter. "Travis didn't smoke," I remarked. "I know, so someone else was here." We surveyed the bridge and the surrounding area. The creek beneath the bridge was shallow but swift, the spring water washing away everything in its path. There were thick bushes along the banks, the perfect place to hide something. Justin walked down to the water and began to look through the thicket. I walked along the other bank, pulling branches apart, looking under every bush. The search dragged on. The sun was getting higher, but there was no result. "Harvey!" Justin shouted from across the bank. "Come here!" I hurried to the bridge and crossed to the other side. Justin was standing beside a large hawthorn bush, spreading the branches with his hands. "There's someone here," he said quietly. I peered through the thicket and saw a light spot among the dark branches. It was a shirt. Justin carefully pulled the branches wider, and we saw Travis. His youngest son was lying on his side in an unnatural pose, his face pale, his lips blue. At first glance, it looked like we were too late. But when Justin checked for a pulse, his face cleared up. Alive, but in bad shape. Help me get him out of here. We carefully pulled Travis out of the thicket. He was unconscious, breathing shallow and intermittent. The left side of his rib cage looked deformed, clearly broken ribs. There was dried blood on his head from hitting something hard. We should call an ambulance, I said, pulling out my phone. Wait, Justin stopped me. Let's see what he has to say first. He pulled a flask of water out of his backpack and gently moistened Travis's lips. After a few minutes, his son opened his eyes and tried to say something. Daddy, he whispered hoarsely. Yes, Travis, I'm here. What's wrong? He tried to rise, but groaned in pain and lay down again. My exhausted son whispered to me in the woods. My mother-in-law said you deserved it, he said faintly, looking me straight in the eye. She said you deserved to be without a son. The words hit like a physical blow. Kimberly hadn't just hurt Travis. She was doing it to get back at me. But for what? Travis, why don't you just tell me the story? How did you end up here? He swallowed hard and continued in a broken whisper. She called last night, after the fight, said she wanted to talk calmly, without yelling. Suggested we meet here, by the bridge, where you and I used to come. Justin silently wrote down every word in his notebook. I arrived around 11. She was already here, standing on the bridge, saying she was ready for a divorce, that she'd give me half the money. And then, Travis squeezed his eyes shut, remembering. Then she started screaming that I betrayed her, that I chose my family over her. Said that Daddy had turned me against her all these years. Her son's voice was getting weaker and weaker, but he kept going. She pushed me. I didn't expect. Fell off the bridge into the thicket. I heard her shouting from above. Your father deserved it, to be without a son. Kimberly wanted to kill Travis to hurt me. 8 years of pent-up hatred for her father-in-law turned into an attempted murder. Where did she put your car? Justin asked. I don't know. I guess she took it away. She took the keys from her. Travis lost consciousness again. His pulse was weak but steady. Justin called for an ambulance and 911 with our location. Dad, we need to get him out of here now, he said, putting the phone away. If Kimberly finds out we found him alive, she might try to finish what she started. But how? He needs medical attention. We'll take him to Dr. Simmons. He's an old family friend we can trust. We'll officially consider the search inconclusive. Dr. Simmons was an old friend. He delivered my sons, treated their childhood illnesses. He's retired now, but he sometimes treated people he knew at home. We carefully carried Travis to the car. Justin contacted dispatch and canceled the ambulance call, citing a false alarm. It was risky, but the alternative was even riskier. On the way into town, Travis regained consciousness several times and recounted details of what had happened. Kimberly called him around 10 p.m. when he had already gone to bed in his rented motel room. Her voice was calm, even affectionate. She was apologizing for the day's fight, asking to meet for a serious talk. She said she knew I was right, Travis whispered. That she was ready to let me go. She just wanted to say a proper goodbye in a place that meant a lot to our relationship. Old Bridge was indeed a special place for their family. It was where Kimberly had first confessed her love to Travis 8 years ago. It's where he proposed to her. By choosing this place for the assassination attempt, she turned a cherished memory into a weapon of deception. Shirarin, when I arrived, she was standing in the middle of the bridge, the son continued. She looked calm, even smiling, talking about how happy we were at the beginning of our relationship. Then the tone of the conversation changed. Kimberly started accusing Travis of being ungrateful, me of interfering in their marriage, Justin of turning his younger brother against his wife. Her voice was getting more and more hysterical. She was screaming that if she couldn't be with me, no one could, that it was better for me to die than to live without her. It culminated in her saying that I deserved to be without my son. Kimberly pushed Travis off the bridge, expecting the 3-foot fall onto the rocks to be fatal. Fortunately, the shrubbery cushioned the impact, although the injuries were serious. What do you remember next? Justin asked. She went downstairs, checked to see if I was breathing. Then she took my car keys and my cell phone, said to let the wild animals finish what they started. That last sentence showed Kimberly's true cruelty. She didn't just want to kill Travis, she wanted to keep him in pain as long as possible. We arrived at Dr. Simmons' house around noon. The old doctor examined Travis and confirmed our fears. 3 broken ribs, concussion, multiple contusions. It's serious, but not critical. He needs rest and observation, the doctor said, bandaging the patient's chest. A few days of bed rest, painkillers, and no physical activity. Can he be moved to our house? And I asked. We can, but carefully. And I'll visit him every day. We agreed that Travis would stay with Dr. Simmons for the time being under the guise of flu treatment. Officially, the search is ongoing. We haven't found anything in the woods. On the drive home, Justin was somber and focused. Now we know the truth, he said, but proving Kimberly's guilt would be difficult. Travis's word against her version of events. What about the car? She drove his Toyota away. That's evidence, but we need to find out where she hid it. We drove into Middletown as the day waned. Kimberly's red Honda was parked outside my house. She was waiting for us on the porch, looking excited and disheveled. Harvey! Justin! She rushed over to us as soon as we got out of the car. What's up? Did you find anything? Not yet, Justin replied briefly. We've searched the main trails, no sign of them. What do we do now? Should we put an ad in the paper? Or hire a private investigator? Her acting was almost perfect, but I knew the truth now. The woman who tried to kill my son yesterday and left him for dead in the woods was standing in front of me. You'll file an official police report tomorrow, I said calmly. In the meantime, we should all get some rest. Kimberly nodded and drove home. Justin and I looked at her, each of us thinking the same thing. Now it was our turn to get revenge. After Kimberly left, Justin and I went inside and locked the door. We needed to think about what we were going to do before our emotions took over. I put the kettle on and sat at the kitchen table, trying to get my thoughts in order. She's a good actress, Justin said, taking off his jacket. If we didn't know the truth, I'd believe her experiences. 8 years of practice, I replied bitterly. That's how long she's been lying to all of us. Justin pulled out a notebook and pen, with the familiar gesture of a cop preparing to plan an operation. So here's what we got. Kimberly lured Travis into the woods under the pretense of a conciliatory conversation and tried to kill him. She has his car, phone, and house keys. Travis is still officially missing. What about that Detroit private investigator? That's a good question. Maybe she hired him to find dirt on Travis or create an alibi, or maybe he was helping her hide the car. The kettle whistled, interrupting our conversation. I brewed a strong pot of tea and set the mug in front of my son. Outside the window, it was starting to get dusk. The lights on at Kimberly's house were on. Justin, what if we did things differently? I said slowly, formulating a thought. Instead of arresting her immediately, let her expose herself for good? What do you mean? Well, think about it. Right now, we have Travis' testimony, but no tangible evidence. A good lawyer can easily build a defense that this was a family argument and the fall off the bridge was an accident. Justin nodded thoughtfully. You're right, but what do you suggest? What if I let her know that Travis is alive and at my house? See how she reacts. If she tries to finish what she started, we'll catch her red-handed, Justin finished. That's an interesting idea, but it's extremely risky if something goes wrong. She almost got Travis killed once already. I don't want her to get away with it for lack of evidence. We were mulling over the details of the plan when the phone rang. It was Dr. Simmons. Harvey, Travis has regained consciousness and he's asking for you. He says he wants to go home. How's he doing? Stable. Ribs will heal on their own if he rests. Concussion's mild. The key now is to keep it from getting worse. We'll pick him up in half an hour. I told Justin about my conversation with the doctor. Okay, he said. Turn. We'll bring Travis home and we'll start tomorrow. But first we have to make sure he's safe. We went to Dr. Simmons. Travis looked a lot better than he had that morning in the woods. His face was back to normal color. His breathing was even. But every time he moved, he wrinkled his chest. How are you feeling, son? I asked, helping him out of bed. It hurts, but it's bearable. The main thing is that I'm alive, and she doesn't know it. Mwakmayanorn. Did you hear our conversation with Justin? Part of it. I agree with your plan. Kimberly must be punished for what she did. Dr. Simmons gave us a supply of painkillers and detailed nursing instructions. He especially emphasized the need for complete rest. Any physical exertion could cause complications with broken ribs. The return trip took 20 minutes. Travis sat in the back seat leaning against the door. Along the way, he gave us additional details of yesterday's events. Kimberly got to the bridge before I did, he said in a low voice. When I arrived, I saw her standing in the middle of the bridge, waving. She looked calm, even smiling. What did you talk about first? About our relationship. She recalled the good times, how we met, our first date, the marriage proposal. Said she understood my need for autonomy. When did you realize something was wrong? When she started talking about Dad, Travis looked at me. At first she just complained that you never accepted her. Then the tone changed. She blamed you for ruining our marriage. Justin listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. His police experience told him what details might be important to the case. Did she say anything about future plans? He asked. Yeah, said if she couldn't be with me. With me, she'd make sure no one else had me. And then she added that Daddy had been meddling in our family for too long. And then she pushed you after that? Not right away. She came closer at first, like she wanted to hug me. I relaxed, thought she was ready for a peaceful conversation. Then she shoved me in the chest with both hands. Travis fell silent, remembering those terrible moments. I fell backward, trying to grab the railing of the bridge, but I didn't make it. I remember flying, then hitting the branches, a sharp pain in my chest. I woke up when she came down to see if I was alive. And what did she do after she made sure you were breathing? Took your car keys and your cell phone, said Daddy wouldn't have a younger son now that she didn't have a husband. Then she left. We pulled into our neighborhood when it was finally dark. Kimberly's house was brightly lit, and her car was parked in the yard. We carefully guided Travis into the house through the back door so the neighbors wouldn't notice. In the living room, I set up my son in a makeshift bed on the couch. Pillows, warm blankets, and set up a table with medicine and water nearby. Justin, meanwhile, was examining the injuries more closely than he had that morning in the woods. The rib fractures are definitely from a hard blow, he said, gently probing Travis's chest. The head wound was from a fall on the rocks. The bruises on his chest are in the shape of handprints. You mean from her pushing him? Exactly. It's not an accident. It's clearly attempted murder. Justin took pictures of the injuries on his phone, recorded Travis's detailed statement on a tape recorder, all of which could be useful in court, should the case go to a formal investigation. Now let's talk about the plan, he said, putting the recording device away. Tomorrow I'll officially continue the search for Travis. I'll check hospitals, morgues, interview possible witnesses. Kimberly shouldn't suspect anything yet. What's next? The night after tomorrow, you casually mentioned to one of the neighbors that Travis has turned up. Tell them he was at a friend's house in another city working on a job. It'll take a few hours for Kimberly to hear the news. How's she going to react? If she really did try to kill him, she'll try to finish the job. She'll come here under some pretense. Check on her sick husband, make up, something like that. Travis listened to our conversation, lying with his eyes closed. He wrinkled his nose in pain from time to time, but he didn't complain. What if she tries to poison me or something? He asked. We'll be ready, Justin assured him. We'll set up hidden cameras, and I'll be on watch. At the first sign of danger, I'll break into the house. That's very risky, I said. Dad, there are risks involved in any investigation, but if we want Kimberly to get a fair punishment, we have to get hard evidence of her guilt. We discussed the details of the operation until late this afternoon. Justin was to bring the necessary surveillance and communications equipment tomorrow. I'll play the role of a grief-stricken father desperately searching for his missing son. Freddie, what about Travis' car? I remembered. I'll look for it tomorrow. It's probably not far away. Kimberly couldn't have driven it far. She had to get home somehow. Maybe that private investigator helped. It's possible, but we'll find out later. Justin got ready to leave. He hugged Travis tightly and said quietly, Hang in there, brother. It'll all be over soon. I'm not afraid of her, Travis replied. After what she's done, I want her to get what she deserves. After Justin left, I helped Travis take the painkillers and settled into the chair next to the couch. My son fell asleep quickly under the influence of the medicine, and I sat in the dark for a long time, pondering what had happened. Over 8 years of marriage, Kimberly had gradually transformed from a simply selfish woman to a true monster. Controlling her husband, isolating herself from her family, financial manipulation, all of this was just a prelude to attempted murder. The worst part is she didn't try to kill Travis in a fit of rage, but deliberately lured him to a secluded spot, picked a moment when no one could interfere, and then left him to die in the woods in cold blood. I looked out the window at the house across the street. The light was on in the bedroom. Kimberly was awake. Maybe she was planning her next move, or just enjoying the thought of getting rid of her husband. But very soon she would realize she had made a fatal mistake. No one has the right to infringe on my son's lives and go unpunished. In 2 days, we'll see what Kimberly is capable of when she realizes her plan has failed. And then it would be our turn to show her what real revenge is. The next morning began with a phone call from Justin. He called early around 7 in the morning when I was just finishing breakfast and Travis was still asleep from the painkillers. "Dad, how's Travis doing?" he asked quietly. "He's sleeping. No fever? No temperature? Breathing evenly. Dr. Simmons said he'd come by this afternoon." "All right," sighs. "Listen, I'm on my way to work now, but I'll bring the equipment tonight. Cameras, tape recorder, communication equipment. I need it all set up by tomorrow." "What about finding Travis's car?" "I'll get on it today. I've got some ideas where it might be hidden." After breakfast, I went out into the garden to check on the plants after the winter. I had to act natural, like I always did in the mornings. The neighbors shouldn't suspect that anything had changed in my house. Dorothy Parker was watering the flowers by her porch and waved at me. "Harvey, how's it going with the search for Travis?" she shouted across the street. "No luck so far," I answered loudly so Kimberly could hear me if she was home. Justin continues to check hospitals and motels in neighboring towns. What does Kimberly say? "Shunom, she's filing her official report today. She's very worried." Kimberly was indeed home. I saw her looking out the kitchen window, watching our conversation, probably writing down every word, trying to see if we knew anything suspicious. Around 10 in the morning, she left the house, got in her car, and drove off toward downtown. I watched through the window as the red Honda disappeared around the corner. Maybe she really did go to file a police report, or maybe she was dealing with some other issue. Travis woke up close to noon. He looked better than yesterday, though any movement still hurt. I helped him wash and change his clothes and gave him some painkillers and warm tea. "How are you feeling?" I asked, making my son comfortable on the couch. "It hurts, but tolerable. The main thing, the head is clear. I remember all the details of what happened on the bridge." "Anything else you want to tell me?" "Yeah. Kimberly said some weird things while we were on the bridge. Something about her having a plan in case I tried to leave her. That she had it all figured out ahead of time. That confirmed our suspicions. The attempted murder was planned, not impulsive." "Did she mention specific details?" "Waksheni, she said that if something happened to me, everyone would think it was an accident. That she'd be a grief-stricken widow who'd get insurance so she could start a new life. So Kimberly was counting on not only killing Travis, but also financially benefiting from his death. Life insurance, joint bank account, house, all would go to her as the legal widow. Son, do you remember if you took out life insurance?" "Yes, 2 years ago. $100,000, a pretty big one. Kimberly insisted on it, said it was a prudent precaution. Another piece of the puzzle was falling into place. Kimberly had been preparing for her husband's murder well in advance, building financial motivation. Dr. Simmons stopped by around 1 o'clock. He examined Travis, checked his bandages, listened to his breathing. "He's on the mend," he said with satisfaction. "The ribs are fused properly. There is no inflammation. The main thing, do not overexert yourself and keep bed rest." "How long will it take for full recovery?" "A month and a half, but in a week he should be able to walk around the house if he's careful." After the doctor left, I made dinner and sat down next to my son. We needed to discuss the details of tomorrow's surgery. "Travis, are you sure you're ready to be a part of this plan?" I asked. "It's going to be dangerous. Dad, she tried to kill me. Cold-blooded, calculated. If we don't stop her, she'll try again. What if she tried to poison you or strangle you? Justin will be there. Besides, I know what she's capable of now." "I'll be careful." We discussed possible scenarios for Kimberly's behavior when she finds out Travis is alive. She'll probably first try to find out if he knows the truth about what happened on the bridge. Then she'll either try to convince him not to tell anyone, or she'll make another attempt at murder. The main thing is not to be alone with her for a second, I warned. As soon as she comes in the house, I'll be there. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Kimberly came back. I watched through the window as she parked in front of her house, pulling some packages out of her car. Her movements were nervous, hurried. She looked back at my house a few times, as if checking to see if anyone was watching her. The phone rang half an hour after she returned. "Harvey?" Kimberly's voice sounded tense. "I filed a police report. They promised to start an official search tomorrow morning." "That's good." "What did they say about the prospects?" "That the first 48 hours are the most important. If they don't find any traces in that time, it gets more complicated." She was quiet for a moment, then she added, "Harvey, don't you think Travis might have, done something to himself? He's been really depressed lately about our problems, trying to set the stage for a suicide." If Travis's body was found in the woods, Kimberly would say that her husband had been depressed and killed himself. "No," I said firmly. "Travis wasn't the kind of man to give up at the first sign of trouble, but he said such strange things before he left, that he'd rather die than go on like this." "Kimberly, people say different things when they're under stress. It doesn't mean they're ready to kill themselves." The conversation continued for a few more minutes. Kimberly was gently probing the ground, trying to see if we suspected her of something. I responded neutrally, playing the grief-stricken father. Justin arrived that evening. He brought a large bag of equipment, miniature cameras, voice recorders, communications equipment, all of which had to be set up in the house to record Kimberly's every move. "How was your day?" he asked, laying out the electronics on the table. Kimberly filed a police report, called cautiously hinting at Travis's possible suicide. "She's preparing a backup version of events," Justin nodded. "In the meantime, I found out something interesting." He pulled a notebook out of his pocket and opened it to the right page. "I talked to Mike Sterling, who works in the narcotics division. Turns out Kimberly had been buying prescription painkillers from underground dealers for months." "For what?" "Officially for chronic back pain, but the quantity of drugs far exceeds the therapeutic dosage. Mike suspects she's either reselling them or stockpiling them for some other purpose." Travis, who was lying on the couch, raised his head. "Kimberly never had back pain. She never even went to a doctor except for a beautician. So she was collecting drugs for something else," Justin concluded. "Maybe she was planning to poison you before the bridge thing." The picture was getting even more sinister. Kimberly hadn't just decided to kill her husband in a jealous rage. She'd been methodically preparing for it for months. "What about the car?" I asked. "I found it. It's in an abandoned parking lot outside of town. Keys in the ignition. Kimberly left it there, counting on it being stolen or found only a few days later." "You gonna pick it up?" Not yet. Just leave it there till tomorrow. I don't want Kimberly to realize we know she's involved." Justin began installing cameras in the living room and kitchen. The tiny devices were easily camouflaged among the usual furnishings. He placed the recorder under the coffee table next to the couch where Travis lay. "Tomorrow night, when Kimberly arrives, I'll be in the car nearby," he explained. "At the first sign of trouble, I'll break into the house. You'll have a panic button you can push, and I'll be here in 30 seconds. "What if she brings a gun?" "Kimberly's not the type. She prefers more subtle methods. Poison, accidents, emotional pressure." We finished setting up around 9 p.m. All the equipment was set up and tested. All we had to do was wait until tomorrow to put the plan into action. "Dad, there's one more detail," Justin said before leaving. "Mike Sterling has agreed to help us. If Kimberly tries to use drugs against Travis, we can prove it." "How?" "Blood tests will show the presence of drugs she's been buying from dealers. And since she doesn't have a prescription for those drugs, that would be direct evidence of attempted poisoning." After Justin left, I helped Travis take his evening dose of painkillers and settled into the chair next to him. The lights were still on outside the window at Kimberly's house. "Dad, don't you think we're taking too much risk?" Travis asked quietly. "I do, but the alternative is worse. If we just arrest her now, she could make bail and go into hiding, or she could hire a good lawyer and get away with it. And this way, we'll have irrefutable proof of her guilt." "Exactly." We sat in silence, each of us thinking about tomorrow. "Kimberly tried to kill my son, and almost succeeded. Now it was our turn to show her that revenge was a dish served cold. Around 11 p.m., the phone rang. It was Kimberly, voice hysterical. "Harvey, you've got to get the police to act faster." Travis could have been in an accident. He could have been kidnapped. "Kimberly, calm down. Justin is doing everything he can." "No," she screamed. "You're all too slow. I demand that my husband be returned to me immediately." That's an interesting caveat. Returned, not found, as if she knew exactly where Travis was. "We'll find him," I said calmly. "It just takes time." Kimberly screamed into the phone for several more minutes, demanding the impossible, threatening to complain to higher authorities. I was recording the entire conversation on a tape recorder. Perhaps it would be useful in court, too. When she finally calmed down, I cautiously asked, "Have you tried calling Travis's friends? Maybe one of them has him." "He doesn't have any friends," Kimberly shouted. "I took care of it. No one should influence my husband but me." Another confession. She openly admitted to Travis's isolation from all social connections. The conversation ended with more tantrums and threats. Kimberly promised to find Travis herself if the police failed to act. She promised to sue anyone who interfered with the search. "Tomorrow she'll know you're alive," I told Travis after the conversation ended. "And then we'll see her real face." My son nodded, gripping the panic button tighter in his hand. The denouement was less than 24 hours away. The next day began with fog. A dense gray shroud enveloped Middletown, making visibility outdoors extremely limited. I woke up early around 6 in the morning and immediately checked on Travis. My son was sleeping soundly, his breathing was even, and there was no fever. Painkillers were helping with the pain from the broken ribs. Justin called at 7:30 as I was brewing my morning coffee. "Dad, how's it going? Ready for today?" "We are. Travis is better. The equipment's working fine. What's new with you?" "Mike Sterling has agreed to help with the surgery. We're going to do a random ID check on Kimberly this afternoon. See what's in her car." "What if she gets suspicious?" "It'll look like a routine check. Mike patrols our neighborhood a lot. There's nothing suspicious about him showing up." We agreed that I'd start spreading the word that Travis was found around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By evening, the news would reach Kimberly, and she would take some action. After breakfast, I went out into the garden to check the mailbox and talk to the neighbors. The fog was beginning to clear, and I could see the shape of the houses and trees. The street was quiet. It was a weekday. Most people had gone to work. Dorothy Parker was watering the flowers in the front flower bed. When she saw me, she waved and came to the fence. "Harvey, how's the search going?" she asked me sympathetically. "Justin is checking hospitals in neighboring counties. No results so far, but he's not giving up hope." "What's the police saying?" "They promise to widen the search if they don't find anything by tonight." We talked for a few more minutes about family problems and the prospects for the search. Dorothy was sympathetic and promised to ask around to see if anyone had seen Travis in the last few days. When I returned to the house, I found Travis awake and trying to sit up on the couch. "Careful," I warned, helping him into a comfortable position. Dr. Simmons said to avoid sudden movements. "It hurts, but it's tolerable. And most importantly, my head is clear. I remember all the details of what happened on the bridge." I gave my son a glass of water and his morning dose of painkillers. Outside the window, an ordinary day of a small town was gradually manifesting itself. People were going to work, school buses were dropping off children, letter carriers were starting their rounds. "Dad, what if the plan doesn't work?" Travis asked. "What if Kimberly doesn't try anything? Then we'll just arrest her based on your testimony. But I don't think she'll be able to resist the temptation to finish what she started." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know her personality. Kimberly can't stand it when things don't go her way, and your survival is the undoing of her calculations." We were discussing the details of the upcoming operation when an unfamiliar car pulled up to the house around 11 in the morning. A man in a dark suit got out of it. The same Detroit private detective I'd seen the day before yesterday. Richard Stone headed straight for Kimberly's house. She met him on the porch, and they had a lively conversation. The conversation went on for about half an hour. Then the detective got into his car and drove away. I wonder what they needed to talk about, Travis wondered. Or maybe she asked him to find your car or to create false evidence. I called Justin and informed him about the private detective's visit. I see, he said. Kimberly's trying to cover her tracks. But that's good for us. The more she makes a fuss, the more evidence we can gather against her. When do you plan on checking her car? Right after lunch. Mike's already on duty in our neighborhood, waiting for the right time. The day dragged on slowly. Travis napped most of the time. I read a book and occasionally glanced out the window at Kimberly's house. Around 2 in the afternoon, she left the house and got into her red Honda. The car slowly pulled out of the yard and headed toward downtown. I called Justin right away. Kimberly had left the house driving down Main Street towards downtown. Oh, that's great. Mike would intercept her at the mall. 20 minutes later, Justin's cell phone rang. Dad, the operation has begun. Mike pulled Kimberly over for an ID check. He's going to inspect the car now. I went to the window and waited for the events to unfold. About an hour later, a red Honda appeared on our street, but not alone. It was followed by a police car with its flashing lights on. Kimberly parked in front of her house and got out of the car. Even from a distance, it was obvious that she was extremely agitated, waving her arms, shouting something to the policeman who got out of the patrol car. It was Mike Sterling, Justin's colleague from the narcotics squad, a tall, stout man in his 40s with the serious face of a seasoned cop. He listened calmly to Kimberly's protests, making notes in his notebook. What's going on? Travis asked, rising from the couch. Aha, I think they found something interesting in Kimberly's car. A few minutes later, another police car pulled up in front of the house. A uniformed Justin got out and walked toward Mike. They talked about something, then Justin approached Kimberly. Even through the closed windows, you could hear her yelling, "This is a setup! Someone planted those pills on me. I never bought drugs." Mike Sterling opened the trunk of the Honda and pulled out a plastic bag of drugs. He showed it to Justin, who nodded. Kimberly continued to scream hysterically about the injustice in the setup. "You have no right," she screamed. "I'm an honest woman. My husband is missing, and you're arresting me." Justin calmly pulled out his handcuffs and secured Kimberly's hands behind her back. She tried to break free, but to no avail. Mike read her rights, explaining the charges of possession of narcotics without a prescription. "Harvey!" Kimberly suddenly shouted, turning toward my house. "Tell them it's not my fault. This is all because of your son." That's an interesting phrase. She was blaming me for what was happening, even though she was officially supposed to think Travis was missing. The cops put Kimberly in the car and drove off toward the station. I looked at them, feeling strangely satisfied. The first part of our plan had been accomplished. Kimberly was in serious trouble with the law. Half an hour later, Justin arrived. "How did it go?" I asked, greeting my son on the doorstep. "Perfect." In the trunk of Kimberly's car, they found 2 bags of prescription painkillers, Oxycontin and morphine, totaling over 100 grams. Is that a lot? More than enough to charge her with possession with intent to distribute. She's looking at 3 to 7 years in prison. Travis listened to our conversation from the couch, occasionally writhing in chest pain. "What did she say?" he asked. "She was yelling that it was a setup, that someone had planted the drugs, demanded a lawyer and threatened to sue everyone. They going to give her bail? I doubt it. The amount of drugs is too high, plus she's got motive to flee, missing husband, family problems." Justin sat down at the kitchen table and pulled out a notebook. "Dad, we need to move fast now. Kimberly will be in a cell until tomorrow night at the most. Then the lawyer will find a way to get her out on bail. So what do you suggest? Tomorrow morning you tell the neighbors that Travis has turned up. Tell them he was at a friend's house in a neighboring state taking care of business. News will get to Kimberly's lawyer, and through him to her. And then what? Kimberly's out on bail, and she'll come straight to you to see if Travis is still alive. That's where we'll catch her. But she'll be more careful after she's arrested. She might be, but vengeance will trump caution. You know how she is." We discussed the details of tomorrow's operation. Justin planned to be stationed close to the house so that, if there was any danger, he could come to the rescue immediately. All of our equipment would remain in place. Cameras, recorders, communications. What about Travis's car? I remembered. Tomorrow morning I would officially find it in an abandoned parking lot and bring it home. It will be further proof that Travis is indeed back. That evening, after Justin left, I sat at the window for a long time, staring at the dark house across the street. For the first time in days, there was no light on. Kimberly was in a holding cell. "Dad, don't you regret what we're doing?" Travis asked. "No. She tried to kill you and almost succeeded. Justice must be served. But the methods fit the crime. Kimberly chose the rules of the game when she decided to get rid of you. We went to bed early. Tomorrow was going to be a busy day, the last day of our operation, after which everything would come to a head. Kimberly would soon realize that her revenge plan had failed, and then we'd show her what real retribution was all about." The morning began with a phone call from Justin. It was 8:30. I just finished breakfast, and Travis was still asleep from another dose of painkillers. "Dad, I have news." My son sounded satisfied. "Kimberly spent the night in her cell. She was assigned a lawyer only last night, so she's not going anywhere until this afternoon." "What about bail?" "The judge set a hearing for this afternoon. Bail's going to be a lot of money given the amount of drugs found and the flight risk." "You think she can make it?" "She has access to Travis' family account. Plus, she can sell jewelry or borrow from family. She'll be out by tonight." We discussed the day's plan of action. In the morning, I'd tell the neighbors about Travis' return, and in the afternoon, Justin would bring his son's car back from the abandoned lot. By evening, the news would reach Kimberly, and then we'd find out what she was capable of. After breakfast, I went out into the garden and started watering the flower beds. I had to give the appearance of a normal day, though inside I was clenching with the tension of anticipation. Dorothy Parker, as usual, came out to her mailbox at 9 o'clock sharp. When she saw me, she waved and headed for the fence. "Harvey, how's it going with the search for Travis?" she asked with her usual concern. "Oh, Dorothy," I said with a look of relief on my face. "Can you believe it? He called late last night." "Really?" The woman was delighted. "Where was he?" "At a friend's house in Pennsylvania, dealing with some work issues, some paperwork problems. His cell phone was dead, and the charger was broken, so I couldn't get in touch." "Oh, thank God. How's Kimberly?" "She must have been so worried. Dash Kimberly." I hesitated for a moment, as if searching for words. "She's got other problems right now. She was arrested yesterday for drugs." Dorothy gasped and pressed her hand to her chest. "What are you talking about? What drugs?" "They found over-the-counter prescription painkillers in the car. A lot of them. The police suspect trafficking." "No way. Kimberly always seemed so decent." "I guess we didn't know her very well." Dorothy peppered me with questions about the details of the arrest, Travis's condition, the family's plans. I answered cautiously, giving just enough information to spread the rumor around town. "When is Travis coming home?" she asked. "This afternoon. Justin's going to pick him up. Tell him I'm glad he's back, and if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." After Dorothy left, I went inside and checked on Travis. His son was awake and looked much better than he had in days. His chest pain had eased, and his movements were more confident. "I heard you talking to Dorothy," he said, sitting down gingerly on the couch. "The news of my return will spread quickly through the city. Everyone will know by lunchtime. By the evening, Kimberly's lawyer will know. Do you think she'll rush over here right away?" "She will. She can't resist the temptation to see if you're really alive." Justin arrived around noon. He was in a good mood. Kimberly's arrest had gone smoothly, and the drugs were exactly the kind she'd bought from the underground dealers. "Mike Sterling did a great job," he said, sitting down at the kitchen table. Kimberly never realized the drugs were planted on her. She keeps yelling about a frame-up and demanding an investigation." "What about the judge?" "The hearing's set for 3 o'clock this afternoon. Bail will be set high, but she'll be able to post it. She'll be home by tonight." "So what's next?" "Then we'll see what she's capable of when she finds out the truth." After lunch, Justin left to pick up Travis' car from the abandoned lot. He returned an hour later, driving a familiar gray Toyota. He parked it in the familiar spot in front of my house, as if Travis had really just returned from his trip. "The picture is complete now," he said with satisfaction. "Everything looks natural." The rest of the day passed in anticipation. Travis was gradually recovering, able to walk around the house, albeit cautiously. The pain in his chest was becoming tolerable, no longer preventing him from breathing normally. "Dad, what happens after this?" he asked me tonight. "You file for divorce, start a new life. Kimberly gets what she deserves." I'm not talking about the legal issues. I'm talking about, won't we be ashamed of what we did? I took a good look at my son. Travis, she tried to kill you. Cold-blooded, calculated, left you for dead in the woods. We just gave her a taste of her own medicine. But we didn't do better than her. We acted fairly. There's a difference. Around 7 p.m., Justin got a call from the station. Dad, Kimberly was released on bail half an hour ago. The lawyer posted $50,000. She's on her way home now. I see. You going to be in the neighborhood? I'm on my way. I'll be in the car across the street from your house. 20 minutes later, I saw Kimberly's red Honda turn onto our street. The car drove slowly past my house, then turned around and parked in front of her house. Kimberly got out of the car and froze when she saw Travis' gray Toyota in front of my house. Even from a distance, I could see the change in her expression. Surprise was replaced by fury. She saw the car, I told Travis. She's coming here now. I'm ready. Kimberly stood by the car for a few minutes, clearly gathering her thoughts. Then she walked briskly toward my house. I made sure all the recording devices were turned on and went to open the door. Harvey! Kimberly burst into the house without waiting for an invitation. Where's Travis? They told me he was back. Yes, he's home, I answered calmly. He's in the living room resting. She rushed into the living room and froze when she saw Travis on the couch. She stared at him in silence for a few seconds, as if she couldn't believe her eyes. You're alive, she whispered. As you can see, Travis answered coldly. But how? I mean, where have you been? Everyone was looking for you. I was right where you left me, at the old bridge in Black Ridge Forest. Kimberly went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You lured me there and pushed me off the bridge. You wanted to kill me. You're crazy, she exclaimed, but her voice was shaking. I never... Kimberly, Travis interrupted her. I remember every word you said. How you said my father deserved to be without a son. How you checked to see if I was breathing after I fell. Hell, that's bullshit. Kimberly looked back at me. Harvey, he's sick. He needs a doctor. I need a lawyer, Travis said, to file an attempted murder charge. Kimberly darted toward the door, but I blocked her way. Nah. What's your hurry? Don't you want to know how Travis survived? Get out of my way. I got enough problems. Yeah, I heard about your arrest. Drugs are serious business. It's a setup, she shrieked. You're all conspiring against me. Just then, Justin walked into the house. Kimberly saw him and backed into the corner of the living room. Welcome home, Kimberly, he said calmly. How are things going at the prison? It's you. She jabbed her finger in his direction. You planted the drugs on me, and now you're making Travis lie. No one's forcing anyone, Justin replied. Travis is just telling the truth about what happened at the bridge. What truth? He disappeared, and now he's showing up and talking nonsense. Kimberly, Travis said quietly, you wanted the insurance money for my death. $100,000. Good money to start a new life. She looked at him wide-eyed. You talked about it on the bridge, the son continued, about being a rich widow, free of a boring husband. No, it didn't happen. It did, Kimberly, and we have proof. Justin showed her a tape recorder that recorded the entire conversation. Everything you say is recorded. Every word can be used against you in a court of law. Kimberly realized she was walking into a trap. Her face contorted with rage. You're all against me, she screamed. 8 years I lived with a man who loved his family more than his wife. 8 years of tolerating my father-in-law's interference in our marriage. No one stopped you from leaving, I remarked. Leave? With what? I put the best years of my life into this marriage. I deserve to be compensated in the form of killing my husband. He was going to leave me anyway, Kimberly cried with anger. I'd rather be dead than have someone else. The confession came out loud and clear. All the recording devices picked it up. Justin pulled out the handcuffs. Kimberly Coleman, you're under arrest on the suspicion of attempted murder. She tried to break free but was unsuccessful. A few minutes later, she was taken to the station, this time on a serious charge. Travis filed for divorce a week later. Kimberly got 7 years for attempted murder and another 3 years for drugs. The sentences should run consecutively. It's been 6 months since those events. Travis has made a full recovery and rented an apartment in downtown Middletown. He works at the same insurance company and plans to marry a coworker, a nice girl named Sarah. Justin got a promotion for solving a case. He and I get together a lot on weekends, fishing, talking about everything. Neither of us feels remorse for what happened. Kimberly chose the rules of the game when she decided to kill Travis. We just showed her that revenge is an art that can be learned at any age. Justice was served. The family's reunited again, and the house across the street stands empty. A mute reminder that evil always gets what it deserves if you are patient and act smart. Sometimes, sitting by the window in the evening, I think about how quickly life can change. One wrong step and a person loses everything. Kimberly thought she was smarter than everyone else. Now she has 10 years to think about her mistakes, and we move on knowing that we protected the one we love and punished the one who deserved it.